Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review, and in this video I'm going to review Minority Report 2 by Koufar. So, Koufar is a power electronics project, and in my opinion, from everything that I've heard so far, I think it's one of the greatest instances of quite recent power electronics projects you can find out there. Now, when it comes to the underground scene, you can find many different artists that go into some similar directions, but I've heard a few albums from Koufar so far and I've been pretty impressed with the results. He goes into a style of power electronics that really appeals to me. There is structure, there is cohesion with the songs, and it really manages to create and maintain a disturbing attitude. Now, this album in particular is a sequel or a follow-up to Minority Report 1 that was released back in 2016. It is released by the label PHAGE, which I do follow every once in a while because this label definitely has some pretty interesting releases when it comes to harsh noise and power electronics. And so yeah, as far as I find that this album in particular manages to just have some amazing aspects to it, I know that it's definitely not gonna be for everyone. Even in terms of like power electronics, it's a pretty intense album and not one of the easiest ones to sit through. And also keep in mind that we're talking about a quite controversial artist addressing in his works a lot of extreme religious and political values, mainly focusing to those in regards to Lebanon and Maronites, because Lebanon is definitely one of those countries that has gone through lots of years of like pain and war and suffering. With all that being said, the music is quite extreme as well. It's not just the overall image and the concepts, it's the entire feel of this album, and it's not like there is a single moment over here where it grabs you by the shoulders and just try to calm you down. This album is designed to make you feel uneasy and uncomfortable all the way throughout it. In its entirety, this album never gives you a breath of fresh air. This is not an easy album to sit through. This is just an extremely brutal album that you can just hear it, that it's filled with a sheer amount of hatred and anger. And for me, those kinds of emotions can be achieved throughout power electronics. And Koufar has managed to be quite effective with the way of presenting all of those emotions with his music. So this album for me definitely succeeds on managing to be quite disturbing and just really dark and misanthropic. And so for me this manages to be one of the most powerful releases out of this year. This is the one direction I like the most out of power electronics, and in my opinion Koufar achieves to just present everything that I like about power electronics in this one project. It is not a short one in its length, but it's only 6 tracks, and each one of those tracks really manages to just put you in this uneasy position. Right off the bat, Identity Card has all of those amazing sounds of like industrial noise coming together, all of those industrial soundscapes that create this legitimately nightmarish sound. And the vocals, my god, those screams are just so infectious to the way they just have this hatred to them. You can just hear this sheer amount of hatred and anger, which in my opinion it's just so effective. It really comes out as like this really misanthropic piece that has this instrumental that is just terrifying. This track in my opinion is one of the most spectacular power electronics pieces I've heard in a very long time. This is just pure, raw and filthy power electronics. This really reminded me of like some approaches of tracks like I'm Not's Heavenly Motherland, which is one of my favorite power electronics pieces of all time, or like really reminding me the powerful album that was Genocide or Gunslaying Linie. The track Defiance seems to go into a much more straightforward and monotone direction, which in my opinion doesn't really manage to just have the emotion of the very first song, even though this one by itself manages to be kinda disturbing, even though it gets much more quickly repetitive. Like it also takes a while to get into the vocals, which go into more of the same directions. And this is like the one main criticism that I have with this album, sort of, is that the vocals, even though they're just amazing and the way they're presented is definitely really cool, they're quite repetitive with their approach and the direction. It's like more of the same with each one of the tracks. It's still though really just shocking, and it doesn't really get less uncomfortable with the next songs. After this we get the track For the Rest of My Life. This song is possibly the most complex when it comes to its instrumental and the way it's presented. It has many elements that seem to just go into some a bit of a more like glitch directions, or just feature some sounds that are just really sort of out there for like power electronic standards, but I really like the way it's presented, the way it's done. It makes for some sounds that really manage to stand out and just make the whole experience feel sort of more exceptional. It's a few touches here and there that really make the song stand out on its own and becoming one of my personal favorite moments out of this whole project. Then we get the fourth one, Sand N-Words Grin, which this track is also this sort of nightmarish feel that was also achieved with the very first track, Identity Card. In my opinion, this track, as far as it took a while to like really click with me, when it did, I would just realize that all of those industrial soundscapes were like pretty claustrophobic and made me quite uncomfortable. It is a pretty uncomfortable listen, and it's one of those songs that in my opinion achieved the most on creating those emotions. Now when it comes to the fifth track, Do Not Love Half Lovers, this is one of those songs that seem to go into a bit of a similar chaotic route with the third track, but in my opinion it wasn't really that much effective. The way all of those sounds were put together wasn't really that cohesive or that complemented. It is the one track that in my opinion just created a bit of a mess, didn't really have that much of a cohesion to it, or just having this much of an effect of being a disturbing and uncomfortable experience. Other than that, it's an okay song, but the one that in my opinion felt the weakest of the bunch. The album ends with a massive 10-minute track, I Am With Terrorism, which offers some great ideas. It is pretty straightforward with its sounds. It is a bit of the more monotone side. It is a track that is nicely developed, and for what it does, I think that it makes for a pretty solid finisher and a track that manages to sort of stand out with the rest of the album. I don't really have that many words to say for this other than that this is, in my opinion, an essential when it comes to power electronics. I know that it's not easy for everyone to just get into this album, but it's definitely worth it if you're looking for some like really raw, brutal and harsh power electronics. I think this is one of the greatest projects this genre has to offer, period. I've heard a few of Koufar releases in the past and I've liked them a lot. This one impressed me. This album is just incredible. I'm going to give Minority Report 2 an 8+ out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why? And what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.